Well, hello and welcome back to another week on my allotment. I've been away 2 weeks and in the weekend in the middle we went down to Tavistock and to Dartmoor. The weather was stunning. We had a lovely weekend. We haven't had the caravan out since last October, November. So it was really good to get back in it and get on the moor, do a bit of walking in some glorious winter weather. And in a second I'll show you a few clips of my wife and I on Dartmoor. And on the plot I really am stalled, and I've said many times before, and I apologise for repeating myself, but the beds are all weeded, they're all top dressed, they were all top dressed back in the autumn. All of it has broken down beautifully, and you can see it slowly dissipating down into the soil, being broken down just as it's meant to be. It's worked a treat, and I will do that every year now. I had my doubts as to whether some of these really thick, heavy, sticky clods of cow manure would break down. But I've raked the beds twice through the winter months, and that definitely aids the breaking down, and it really does work. So I'm very pleased with that. But it does mean I am simply waiting for the weather to do its thing. February was glorious. I recorded 16 degrees on the thermometer here outside the shed. But today it's 2 degrees, and the next week is forecast that we might have a few slurries of sleet. The temperatures aren't getting up much above 6 degrees during the day. And of course, as we all know, it's no good looking at the seed packet and saying, right, sow in February or March and cracking on. You've got to look at the weather. At home, I've sowed my first gutter of peas in the greenhouse. I've got overwintered cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower plants that have survived perfectly well in the cold greenhouse, ready to go in when the ground warms up. I've sowed tomatoes this week. I've got kale, more broccoli and cauliflower seedlings, onion, leeks. There's quite a lot of it's on my windowsill in the house, but that's working a treat. So there's lots going on, it's just not particularly evident on the plot. So I'm up here, it's Sunday as usual. Interestingly, through the winter I set my alarm for 6 o'clock on a Sunday. I'm up here 6:45 after making breakfast for my wife, so it's ready for her when she comes downstairs. But for the first time, because the dawns are getting earlier, I set my alarm for 5:30 this morning. As usual, it didn't go off, I was awake. So I was up here a bit earlier. No wonderful sunrise, but it's definitely getting lighter earlier and staying lighter later, which is great news for us gardeners. So without further ado, I'll show you a few clips of our weekend on Dartmoor. Welcome to Dartmoor. It's a beautiful day, but it is Baltic. She doesn't like cows. It's like an enchanted forest. They've let the dogs loose.
Yeah, they have. They're running around like crazy.
Wow, what a spot. Really?
Yeah. Now where? That one? That one?
That one and the grey one?
This one?
Yeah.
Yay!
She's getting weary now. So, what have I been up to since you last saw me on the plot? Well, if I get out of the way, all those gourds, I have spent the last 2 weeks rubbing down with sandpaper, drilling holes, and then painting and varnishing. And this is a fraction of the total that I've got. And my intention is to take them down the farm shop and hopefully sell them for a small profit. And the arrangement with the farm shop is we take our produce down there, they sell it to the public, and then we split the profit 50-50. We'll see. I mean, obviously all I ever take down there is food. I've never taken birdhouses down there, so we shall see. I'll stick them in the wheelbarrow, or a few of them, and I've done a laminated sheet which explains what the gourds are and a little bit of their history, hopefully to promote a little bit of interest amongst the public as they enter the shop and sell a few. Interestingly, when I did a bit of research this week to make this sheet, turns out that the gourd birdhouse originates in North America and was used by the native peoples to make birdhouses, and they hung them up in their villages, and they suffered badly from biting insects. Well, a bird called the purple martin used these birdhouses, and they eat biting insects. So they would fly around the village, keeping down the population of biting insects, which helped the local population, and the natives made these birdhouses for the martins to live in. What a wonderful relationship. That's what was clever about the native peoples of North America and everywhere. They worked with nature, not against it. You know, we called them savages when we arrived. We couldn't have been further from the truth. I think the savages came in the boats. Anyway, enough social comment. So at some point today I'm going to take some of them down and I'll let you know how they go. I checked back on my last few videos and it was the 15th of January when I stuck this barrel over one of the rhubarb plants, and I haven't looked under it since. The barrel's the perfect thing to force rhubarb, and Cheryl says she fancies a rhubarb crumble for tea tonight, so I've been instructed to take home some rhubarb. So with you, I'd like to now have a look. I've no idea what to expect. I've got to text her if there isn't any rhubarb. So let's have a look what I've got. The grand reveal. Oh, look at that. That is fantastic. I've never had rhubarb like that before, but then I've never used a barrel that big. The whole plant has been forced. That's wonderful. Right, rhubarb crumble for tea. One of the raised beds that I recently constructed, I've got a little bit of odds and sods of glass. I've sown some radish. I thought it is still a bit cold, but I had the glass on the raised bed for a week before I sowed the radish, and they've germinated very well. Just hope that they can grow on and produce a crop in these rather cold temperatures. But I've done it in other places as well. I know I've shown you before, but I've got these plastic corrugated sheets, and they're protecting a row of strawberries, and last year they were warmed enough to produce a crop of strawberries about 3 weeks before my main beds, and it was a good crop from one row. So I'm hoping that they'll do the same again and extend our strawberry picking season. We shall see. And next to them, just there, is the fig that a few months ago I planted there, and you can see the stones surround. They're patio slabs. So the fig is growing in a box, effectively. There is room between the slabs for the roots to work their way out. But the theory of that is that because you put the fig tree under stress, it promotes the growth of fruit, which is how it reproduces. So it feels itself under stress because it's contained. So instead of producing lots of leafy growth, it concentrates on growing figs. Now, I don't expect it to grow figs for production this year, but in the next 3 to 4 years, maybe, I'll get a reasonable crop of figs off of that. That would be lovely. Never had that before. Well, this week I thought I'd tell you another story from my past. Now, I'll start with the warning that it's not a funny story. It's interesting. It's actually very sad. But it's interesting nevertheless. And it happened, well, I was in Germany from 1987 to 1992, I think. So that's the times we're talking about. And while I was out there, because I'd come from the commandos, I never had any aspiration of being a Royal Engineer diver. In fact, I think when I saw Jaws as a child, I never wanted to go near water again. But the troops in Germany used to go to Kiel, up in the north of Germany, to do their diving course. There was a small training team up there. And yeah, went up there for a 2 or 3 day diving aptitude. And the aptitude was basically a sort of a screening process to see if you were fit enough, determined enough, strong enough, and physiologically, with your middle ears, physically able to do a diving course before they sent you to Portsmouth, where you did the full, I think it was an 8-week course. And in Germany, they were having trouble finding troops to pass this incredibly arduous Kiel aptitude. And because I'd come from the commandos, the diving team approached me and said, would I go up and have a go? And I said, I don't really want to be a diver. They said, look, that's fine, but we just need people to pass it, to show others that it can be done. Would you have a go at it? I said, well, yeah, all right, I'll have a go at it. And I went up and I passed it. And then from Hamel, or Hameln, Pied Piper Town, Hamlin as it's called in the myth, I went back to Portsmouth and I did the full course. I then went and did the advanced course, then I did the supervisor course, then I went back there as an instructor, and eventually I ended up in my last post in the army as a captain, running the team that went round inspecting the diving team. So I had quite a career. And when I was in Germany as a qualified diver, something happened that meant that the Royal Military Police called on our diving team to help them. And this is what happened. A young soldier, and this is the story we were told, it was second-hand to us, but they gave us the background to why we were doing an underwater search. A young soldier was having therapy. He obviously had mental issues. It even happened back then. And he was seeing a psychologist. I believe she was British, you know, a civilian, a lady. And at some point during his treatment and while he was, you know, under her care, he abducted her and took her out into the local German woods, tied her against a tree with a view to killing her. Anyway, being a psychologist and obviously a level-headed woman, she was talking to him and clearly trying to talk him out of doing, you know, a terrible thing. And I don't know the details because obviously we weren't there. But at some point he decided to make a cup of tea, and he had his military equipment with him. And in this military equipment, right back then, you use these things called hexamine blocks, which are like large firelighters, and you can put a metal mug over them and they'll brew or boil up water. So he was doing this in the woods with this unfortunate woman tied to the tree, and it's a very distinctive smell, and it was drifting through the woods. And in the woods at that time was a local German forestmeister, a little bit like Forestry Commission, and he was out and he had a camera and a rifle, and he was hunting. And he smelt this hexamine block burning, followed the smell, and came across this scene with a woman tied to a tree and a young troubled soldier. Anyway, whatever ensued, the British soldier took the camera and the rifle off this German and hit him with the rifle and killed him. Hence, you know, it's a very unfortunate, tragic tale. Anyway, he left the woman, which is the good news, that she wasn't harmed, and he ran off, and eventually somebody must have found the woman and untied her and found the body. And the RMPs had this guy in custody, and he said he'd got rid of the camera and the rifle in a local sewage pit. Never clean water. He couldn't have thrown it in clean, moving water, could he? But he threw the camera and the rifle in this, what I can only describe as a cesspit. It was less than 1 metre deep, but because of the nature of the sludge and the muck, we had to get in it to be able to search with our hands. Well, it was disgusting water, and me and this other guy were chosen as the divers to go in. And we were in there a fair amount of time, and we found the camera and the rifle, which were obviously needed for the legal case against this guy. And I have no idea what happened to him. We were never informed. But I do remember when they brought the rifle out, there were still human hairs on the... It was a very old-fashioned, like a flintlock thing, a classic rifle. And, there's a large cocking lever, which is the bit that killed this German. There were still hairs on it. So, not a very pleasant story, but it does give you a flavour of the sort of things we used to have to get involved in. Yeah, I'm afraid there's no punchline. Well, there's an important and memorable moment. My first crop of 2023. Lovely. And you can tell how soft they are. And I'm sure they'll be very sweet tonight in our crumble. And what Cheryl doesn't use will freeze. Lovely. Well, that's how I've left the plant. I shall label that now with a sign that says it was forced this year. And I will leave it and not crop anything from it for the remainder of the year. And then next year I'll force another one of the 4 plants. I'll be interested tonight to see if I taste any difference. I'll let you know. Well, it's just lunchtime, and I'm going to call that a day because I've got some things to do in the back garden. And I'd be more productive in the back garden than I am up here because, as I keep saying, I'm looking around trying to find things to do. And I can't anymore. The gourds have all gone, or the gourds that I've prepared have now gone to the farm shop, and we'll see how that goes, and I'll let you know. And I've got the same amount, about another 20 or so, in Les's storeroom, and at some point this week I'll wheelbarrow them over and start the process of drilling, gouging out, etc, etc. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but I'm not doing it this year. It is a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that detracts from growing fruits and vegetables. So I enjoyed it, and I'll probably do it again in the future, but not this year. So I've done that. I've transferred some of the horse muck that I'm storing in a bay into the working compost heap, and I've dug the working compost heap about and agitated it, and I've put the thermometer in, and it started to rise. So I'll have a look in the week, see what that goes up to. You saw me pick some of my rhubarb. That's a really exciting moment. That's the best I've ever done. We've got a terracotta forcer, but it's only about that diameter. So that 45 gallon oil drum is the perfect rhubarb forcer. But apart from that, really, it's been a case of chopping up more firewood and pouncing about and titivating on site. We've got a week coming of cold and wet weather, so there'll be nothing going on the plot this week. We're away next week in the caravan, and then the following weekend I shall post a video, and who knows, by then I may be able to bring some peas on site and really start sowing in the greenhouse at home in earnest. So we shall see. I have got some brassicas that I sowed in the autumn that have overwintered in the cold greenhouse at home, and I'm going to put them in and see if they do crop They're not an overwintering type, but I'm going to see. So lots to look forward to, but right now nothing's really happening. So thank you for joining me this week. Thanks to all those who've subscribed and have been along for the long journey. And all being well, I shall see you in a fortnight. Look after yourselves, take care, and bye for now.